the mayor make it?
Yeah, so
Look to the
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's planning meeting. I'll just make this statement before we start. In accordance with the Openness of Local Bodies Regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. The recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use of and speak clearly into the microphones at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. A polite reminder that those members of the public in attendance must not act in a disorderly or disruptive manner or otherwise interfere with the council's proper conduct of its business. Thank you. Right. Apologies for absence.
apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Ridley, Councillor Richard Morris, Councillor Bentley, Councillor Kozlowski and Councillor Josh Reid.
Thank you. Appointments of substitutes.
None have been received, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. None. Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, may I sign?
Move.
Chairman, and just about the minutes, I've got no problem with the minutes at all, but is it possible when we do have the minutes printed that we don't have an application with the address on one side of the page and the results on another? It doesn't look, I turned over and wondered what the application was when I read the minutes. If that is at all possible, when we print these very expensive paper copies off, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Moving on to item 5, the Borough Council of Oadby and Wigston, land to the east of Bideford Close, Wigston, tree preservation order. Mr. Benito, please.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. The report is as in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Councillor Lloydell.
Just out of interest, Chair, could we please just query, because we've been discussing this scoring of the tempo, because there seems to be a discrepancy between our scoring and the applicant's scoring. If you could just explain that, why have they got it to 11, but we've got it one higher, and is the higher a score that takes it closer to a TPO or further away?
What page are you on, Helen?
I'm on page 9.
Thank you. So, in the process that Tempo sets out, at point C, possibly? Yes, part C of the guide. It states where none of the other factors apply: historical interest, cultural interest. Trees that have made it to that part in the assessment score 1 point regardless. In the owner / TPO assessment report, they failed to give that extra point in part C to the score. And so having 1 extra point to each of the tree features and bumps it up into the category of TPO defensible. Yeah, so it's a higher rating that was just missed by their consultant.
Right, so the higher the rating, the more the TPO is necessary. The lower the rating, it isn't.
The more defendable it is, quantitatively assessed, and in this standard assessment methodology, when it hits 12 points, they are assigned as TPO defensible.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bolton.
Actually, it's got a full report and differences of opinion, but I'll sway on the officer's recommendation and I will move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lloydell, thank you. So the recommendation was that it was to be confirmed without modification has been passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I voted yeah.
Taken it by general affirmation.
Yeah. Anybody abstain on the vote, or is everybody in agreement?
We're all in agreement, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry about that, I must have been asleep. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 6, which is the land adjacent to 23 Highcroft Road overlay. We have 2 speakers. Mr Dillon, if you'd like to come forward. You have 5 minutes and...
Can I ask a question for information before the speaker goes? Under the rules,
Can you...
this is an inquiry as to how it reached the committee. Who decided or requested that it was not to be an officer's decision? I've read this.
It was called, if I remember...
For patient's sake, I would like to know how it got here. Did the ward member ask?
Yes.
Oh, because it doesn't say here.
Okay.
Councillor, if you look at page
Listed.
page 20, about midway down, it states Councillor Gamble of the ward councillors called this application in.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes and we'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, thank you, councillors. So, yeah, I bought the plot of land in 2020. So it was sold as part of 23 Highcroft Road. So the bungalow was sold separately and the land was sold separately. So I didn't know that there was, when I saw the land, it was actually perfect for a family home for myself. So my children go to school at Gartree. So at the moment we live in Great Glen, so I have to drive them to school and this way they have to walk to school. It's a lovely area as well, a lovely place for a family home. And it's 100 yards from my parents' house as well, who are getting old, so it just made sense. I didn't know there was a Badgers set on there when I purchased it, so I knew Pam and Peter Minot from the Badgers Trust, who I think it's the Leicestershire and Rutland Badgers Trust. And so I spoke to them and they came on the site and had a look at it and showed me where the Badgers set was, and that actually I was okay to clear some at the front and then build a house at the front, as long as I didn't disturb the Badgers set at the back, which is actually to the rear of the site. And so that's what I did, and I spoke to Pam and Peter regularly. Even because there's actually no boundary between 23, the bungalow, and the land I bought. And originally wanted to put a fence up, but Pam and Peter suggested we just leave it because it might disturb the Badgers set, so we did that. I also cleared all of the shrubs and the trees in the front, small trees, by hand. So I didn't want a big bulldozer on. That's quite mindful, which is why it took me so long to clear it. I did get other people to help clear it, pay a few people, didn't always work out, so in the main I did it myself. And then right at the end, once we cleared it, I got an ecologist, Louise Summers, on board just to make sure that everything was okay with the Badgers set. And we sort of put a mesh fence just to block that area off, so it was clear that was a separate area. And then we had, right at the end, we had a small 8-ton tractor come on and just sort of clear any roots at the front again. Again, that was speaking to the ecologist before I did that. And Pam and Peter actually came on site that day and had a look and were happy with what we'd done. So having cleared it, the original plan was to build a family home, but my dad wasn't well. He had a minor heart attack a year ago, so I actually changed the plans and decided to put a small bungalow and family home. The site was wide enough. but the planning officer, John Cosgrove, felt that was overdeveloped. So we took what he said on board and we basically just got rid of the bungalow, left the family home there, and we switched the garage around, said it would be better on the other side. And there was a couple of the points that he made, setback side. So we took it all on board and resubmitted the plans just for the single dwelling, and which I personally feel is in keeping with the street. I noticed Councillor Gamble has put on one of his comments here that Highcroft Road consists entirely of bungalows, and that indicates both the two-storey properties will be out of character. That's actually incorrect if you've seen the site. It's half two-storey houses and half bungalows. And actually, to the left of me is a two-storey house, and to the right, bungalow 23 is now got a planning application for a two-storey house, as that's opposite 22 Highcroft Road. So I think that would mean that more houses are two-storey.
Minute left.
Yeah, that was it from me, but yeah, that was my intentions, and it still is to build a family home.
Okay, thank you for that. We also have,
Any questions for clarification?
sorry, has anybody got any questions for clarification on what has been said? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Johnson, if you'd like to come forward. You also have 5 minutes, and we'll let you know when there's 1 minute remaining.
Hi, good evening all. I've been elected by the neighbours to come and just put a little few points across. First of all, we as neighbours, we don't have an objection to the site being developed, but it's having one that's more in keeping with the actual properties there at the moment. I know that there's an application gone in for number 23, which is an existing bungalow, but they are not actually increasing the height of the bungalow. They're doing it as like a 1.5 height. And I know some of the neighbours are just a little bit concerned that the bottom end of Highcroft Road is bungalows, and then there's going to be a 2-storey house at the end of it, which is kind of out of keeping, but at least this time it's only one property. The only problem we did have was we received the letter through the post, but the actual plans for the new development wasn't on the internet at all. It wasn't until making a phone call last Thursday that the actual admin realised that there was no plans of the new property putting on. So obviously the neighbours have literally got together in a couple of hours to discuss what was on there. Because obviously we've been waiting for the plans to come on and see what actually we're going to be facing. So I don't know whose actual fault was that. But also, the plans, one of the neighbours has noticed that the plans that are submitted shows a red dotted line along the property where the hedgerow used to be. That actual line isn't where the new fence has been put up. The land is actually cut out slightly an inch to one side. The hedgerow has been taken out, it has affected the wildlife, the birds and everything in the area. I'm not sure whether that actually should have been taken out or not originally, but even that hedgerow is not where this red line is. It's kind of like level with the end house, their garage. Where the fence is now, it's his fence. Mine is like the alleyway. I don't know whether that's just part of the drawing or not, but if that red line was actually drawn true, it would actually come into the kind of corner of the house and the patio area. So it's just these little things that the neighbours just want to tear up. one of the other negatives as well is there's no adequate echo and wildlife reports. Now, I know the badgers are on there, and I've actually got video evidence from my doorbell last week to see the badgers ran about. And I know when the first lots of planning went in, there was no mention of the badger set at all. But luckily there is now, so that is good. Now we're actually alive and kicking. The other thing that neighbours are just slightly concerned about is because it's a 5-bedroom house, it shows space for a 2-car garage and a little bit of off-road parking. But Highcroft Road gets mistaken quite a lot for actual road, and we get a lot of traffic going down there and using the cul-de-sac as a turning round area. So we're just concerned about the amount of
1 minute left.
Is there enough parking there?
1 minute left.
Okay. I think that's really it's just those little questions that we need to just have the answers to, but we are in no way an objection to the site being redeveloped as long as it's only one property. It's just mainly that the height of it is in keeping with the area.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody got any questions for clarification? No? Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask Mr Cosgrove to present his report then, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. This application seeks the redevelopment of a portion of former garden land located to the north end of Highcroft Road. The application proposes the erection of a single dwelling with off-road parking and associated garden. Here's the site, as you can see. Here's some views, the street scene looking south from the application site down Highcroft Road to give you some idea of the character of the area. The larger dwellings are located to the southern end of the road. As you can see, the street scene, the view to the north, view from the north, from the application site itself, and you can see the immediately adjacent houses are somewhat smaller. This is the front view of the site showing where the vegetation is cleared. The green parcel towards the rear of the site where the trees are is the area containing the badger set. These are the immediately adjacent dwellings to the east and the larger dwellings that you can see to the north at the end of the hammerhead. This is the turning area that was just discussed a moment ago. There you can see the adjacent house, number 23, that's immediately next door. It is a 1.5-storey bungalow with a ridge height of about 6.5 metres. The site plan as originally submitted, as you will see, proposed 2 houses, which we did consider to be an overdevelopment of the plot. Also, you'll note to the northern end, there was additional parking for the larger of the 2 houses that would have badly interfered with the turning area in that hammerhead. That's now been omitted. These are the front elevations that were originally submitted. You can see they're quite substantial houses, fully filled the plot. This is the plan as revised. It's been scaled down considerably. You'll see it respects the existing building line. The parking area, well, there's 2 cars shown, is larger. I suspect could contain more dwellings, but they're shown there quite correctly to allow for opening of the garage doors, etc. And as you'll see, it's been shifted south to interfere considerably less with the turning area to the top of the road. The Highways Authority were consulted on this and actually had no problem with either application, but this one is considerably better in highways terms. Here's the proposed elevations to the front. To your left of the drawing, the lower edge has a ridge height of 7.3 metres, so less than a metre higher than the ridge of the adjacent house. And as it steps up, and it was my consideration that this step really softens the impact of the larger house as you step away from the bungalows further down the street. Proposed rear again. As you'll see, there's no windows. In terms of amenity, there's no windows in the flank, the south-facing flank, facing the dwelling number 23. And the windows are relatively modest in the north-facing flank, and they wouldn't have any amenity impacts. We do know the concern was raised from overlooking from a neighbour across the street, but there's 27 metres window to window between them, so it's not considered that that would have a significant amenity impact. Is there proposed floor plans showing a 5-bedroom house and a generous garage? But while the dwelling is large, the quantity of parking provided is considered acceptable for a dwelling of this size. Here's the rear fencing. This area is what fences off the Badger set to the rear of the plot. That fencing would be retained. Here is the Badger set. Apologies for the quality of this image. It may be quite difficult to make out, but if you can see on the left-hand side of the image, you may be able to make out 2 small holes. They're the actual entrances to the Badger set itself. This area of land is not being touched by the application. The applicant submitted an ecological appraisal with the application that was sent to both the Leicestershire and Rutland Badger Trust and the county ecologist. The Badger Trust have raised some concerns about the application. However, the county ecologist has said that this land is not suitable in the long term for foraging for badgers to survive on. There's very limited feeding, and that they're quite content with the application as long as the measures contained within that ecological appraisal are followed. And that involves the leaving of this area of land open to the rear and the use of appropriate fencing in and around the site. They are content to the fencing, separating it from the garden, as this would be in the badger's long-term best interests. And the ecologist did say that long-term, this is not an appropriate site for badgers. So, subject to conditions requiring a proper landscaping scheme to include replanting, because the loss of that hedge is unfortunate, but it's not a protected hedge. And in the implementation of the correct measures to protect the badgers, we'd have no real concerns in terms of the impact on any ecology impacts of the proposal. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillors.
Thank you for that report. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lloydell, please.
Yes, Chair, just an initial reflection on the revised plan. Have we got a condition on that plan that it cannot be subdivided into 2 properties? Because looking at the plan at the ground floor, and that garage could quite easily be turned into a room, which would quite easily subdivide. I mean, the applicant has said he has no intentions of doing that, but could we protect it so that it cannot become 2 properties? That's my first question. The second one is I am concerned about this badger set. Probably Councillor Bolter, who will know more about things than I do. But it looks like the badger set is going to be hemmed in. And that will only be to the detriment of the badger set, which does concern me. So I'd like Mr. Cosgrove, please, to look into that a bit further and to reassure this committee that that is not going to happen. Because one of his comments was that whichever group it is doesn't think this is an ideal place. No, I would agree with him. It's not an ideal place. But what are they going to do to protect these badgers and to stop them being strangled out of that area? Thank you, Chair. Mr. Cosgrove?
On your first point, Councillor, we have imposed a condition removing permitted development rights to include permission for alterations. So any such scheme would require planning permission and would have to be assessed on its merits at a later date. Regarding the badgers, the issue with them is the suitability of the wider area for the badgers. And it's something of a compromise to include the fence to keep them away from the garden. But the county ecologist, who I would have to defer to her expertise on these, was of the opinion that that's the better option. And that as long as it's left open, the remainder of the site is left open for them to come and go, that wooded area to the rear, there wouldn't be a detrimental impact on the badgers. Seemingly what is causing a problem is the people feeding them. And they get used to being fed in residential gardens by the local householders. And when that stops, the badgers then have lost the ability to forage and starve. So keeping them away from the gardens is actually in some ways beneficial.
Thank you, Mr Cosgrove, but do the badgers know that? I think we've had issues on Eastway Road where badgers it completely ignore fences and will dig under them, go through them or drive through them to get to various feeding grounds. And gardens are brilliant feeding grounds. So I still have concerns about this. It would have been better, in my opinion. I don't know about Bill's, but to see the badger set, well, I don't know, protected in some way, or in fact moved to a more suitable place for them. I've got a feeling that these badgers are going to become extinct.
If I may, Councillor, I think that the logic of the fencing is as much to keep people away from the badgers as the badgers away from the people, if that makes any sense. And yes, the County Ecologist shared your concerns. Whether this development happens or not, the long-term future of that set is by no means assured. And it's unlikely to be, in the long term, any sort of suitable habitat for the badgers. So you're probably right.
Okay. Mr Ball, you'd got something to say on the subdivision.
Yes, Councillor Lloyd. In terms of what amounts to development under the Town and Country Planning Act, anything that involves the subdivision of a building, including any part of it as a dwelling house, for use as two or more separate dwellings, just amount to development require a separate planning permission. If the applicant did go ahead after being granted this planning permission and attempted to subdivide that building, it would be subject to an enforcement notice and the enforcement thereafter if that leisure order is there.
Councillor Porter?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Difficult one, isn't it? Residents don't object to land being developed. That's the first obstacle overcome. The second one is, does it fit in with the rest of the area? Not your opinion. If we put the plans on the board again, pictures of the area, I noticed a large house. Yes. That one behind the lamppost, what number is that house?
On the right-hand side, it's number 2, Councillor.
Right-hand side.
It's number 2, Councillor.
Number 2. And in relationship to this property, is it both about the same size? Is it going to be bigger?
I'd say it's broadly similar, perhaps a little taller.
Right, okay. So there's comparisons within the street of what's proposed to be built. So it's not something different to what's in the street already. That's already been established. I can't think of any policies that we have where it doesn't fit a policy. Now, we are guided by policies. If we go against policy, we see ourselves in great difficulty. As for the badgers, well, it's difficult. Badgers don't like fences. Take them down, dig under them, dig them out, go through them. They're like a bulldozer when they get going. They take all before them. Whether that's suitable fencing, that's a matter of opinion. I would perhaps suggest it's not suitable fencing to keep the badgers in or keep the residents out, to be honest. It's like 3-foot chain link fencing to me, which is nothing to a badger. If you've seen a badger's jaws, they could eat through that in just a few minutes without any effort. But anyway, we are not the experts on this. That's what Mr. Ball's going to tell us. We've got instead of Mr. Gill, Mr. Ball's going to tell us tonight. We're not the badger experts. They've been in touch with the county expert. He says it's not a problem. We've got our own opinions, I'm sure. But as there's no policy against this, the badgers seem to be protected. What about the parking though? It's 5-bedroomed, yet there's only, is it 3 parking spaces? Two in the garage and one, was it two in the garage and two outside? Does that meet the county standard?
There's no objection.
Mr Cosgrove?
Yeah, the county have raised no objection. Raised no objections at all in highways ground. 4 parking spaces would be more than adequate for a dwelling of this size. And looking at the hard surfacing, I think there is more room for more than 2 cars on there. If you notice, I'll go back to the picture. They are shown quite centrally located. Depending on the size of your car, you would definitely have room for another one on there.
Okay, all right. So there's sufficient parking on site. It meets the planning policies we've got, doesn't breach any of them. The badges is a different question that the experts say is being dealt with sufficiently. I have our own opinions about that, but sufficiently. So I can't see any grounds on which we can actually turn it down on, unless I've missed something that I haven't picked up this evening.
Fence was one.
So with that, I've got no option but to move permit.
Thank you, Councillor Bolter. Any more questions from anybody? Councillor Lloydell.
Yes, Chair. I think Mr Cosgrove answered the question, but I wasn't quite sure. There was a question raised by the objector about the hedgerow and the fence, and I presume he's talking about the fence which is on the right-hand side as we look at the application, that seems to slope down towards another property. The hedgerow was not a protected one, I understand. Is the fencing in the correct place? Has that been checked? If it hasn't been checked, is someone going to check it? And if it's not going to be checked, is that a civil matter? Thank you.
That's good. The applicant has drawn the red line around their land and has signed the relevant certificate saying that it's their land. After that point, it's a civil matter should there be any discrepancy. The plans do seem to match what's shown on the plot as far as the drawings we've been submitted in terms of site plans. If that's land not in their ownership, that's at their risk.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? It's been proposed by Councillor Bolter, I will second it. All those in favour of permit? It's unanimous. It's now permitted. Thank you. Yeah, I will do. Okay, there are no other items on tonight's agenda, so I thank you for all for your attendance and say good night. Thank you.